Alexandra let the silence stretch. A human child could have timed their missile salvos to that rhythm. Several human children had. The hologram shifted focus to Luna's far side, where mining lasers cut through regolith in suspiciously precise, geometric patterns. Not random excavation, foundations. The delegates saw it too late. Each new structure mirrored an imperial stronghold's architectural blueprints, the weak points marked with brutal clarity. Certainty makes blind spots, Alexandra observed as alarms blared through the compound. Not the usual security alerts. These were deeper, more primal, the sound a hive makes when smoke seeps through cracks. Yours just happened to be exactly 2 meters wide. She didn't need to elaborate. Every delegate knew the standard dimensions of Imperial blast doors, the same doors currently booting up emergency protocols, human-designed firmware recognizing commander biometrics from 3 infants rapidly dividing epithelial cells. The star map recalculated one last time. Suggested strike vectors fanned, out from Earth like spokes on a wheel, each route traced directly back through historical Imperial attack patterns. A child's connect-the-dots puzzle revealing a smiling face. Outside, the footsteps grew louder. Inside, the warlord finally understood why human lullabies all ended the same way. The hologram froze on an image 7 cycles old, an Imperial propaganda poster celebrating victory over the Rigelians. The caption glowed mockingly across the delegates' horrified faces. Supremacy through standardization. Alexandra smiled. Have a biscuit. The warlord wasn't amused. He snatched the cup, gulped the tea in one swallow, then spasmed. His clawed hands flew to his throat, chairs scraped back, weapons unsheathed. Alexandra didn't move. It's hot. You'll find. The warlord wheezed, glaring. First-degree burns, no poison, just shoo-hoo. The realization dawned slower than the pain. She'd let him take the cup precisely because she knew his species lacked heat receptors in their upper esophagi. A minor, humiliating miscalculation. Behind them, the containment pod's status light flickered. The infants had stopped crying 37 seconds ago. The delegates hadn't noticed. Alexandra had. Your mistake, she said, pouring a fresh cup, was assuming hostages work both ways. At the far end of the table, the intelligence liaison's eyes suddenly widened. His data slate showed a cascade of alerts. Ambassador Varric, I see it. Varric's mandibles clenched. The pod's transmission lines weren't inactive, they were repurposed. Alexandra passed him a napkin. You held my children's hands. You should have checked their fingernails. The delegates stiffened. The tactical officer frantically typed commands. The biometric sensors. They weren't just monitoring the infant's vitals. They were broadcasting and receiving. Alexandra sipped. Fetal cell structure allows for excellent signal resonance, a quirk of human gestation. The containment pod's comm indicator glowed steady green. The warlord finally understood. They're transmitters. No. She set down her cup. A hairline crack appeared in the porcelain. They're repeaters. Silence. Then, from every delegate's wrist console, personal terminal, and embedded headset, a synchronized ping. Varric's fingers hovered over his screen. The notification read, Access granted. The authentication signature matched his own DNA. Impossible, unless. Alexandra watched him piece it together. The tea, the biscuits, the napkins. Every delegate had touched something. Every delegate had left skin cells behind. The warlord snarled, reaching for his sidearm. Alexandra's teaspoon came to rest against the saucer with a chime like a death knell. Don't. Lord Varric's mandibles clicked like a loading weapon. He leaned across the obsidian table, his chitinous exoskeleton scraping against the polished surface, the containment pod's pale light reflected in his compound eyes. We have your offspring, he said, each word sharpened for maximum impact. He waited for the human's facade to crack, for tears, trembling, the inevitable collapse. Alexandra examined the teapot's porcelain curves. Earl Grey or chamomile? The warlord's fist slammed down. Nutrient fluids from his exoskeletal joints splattered the table. Do you comprehend your position? Those mewling pink things in that pod will die if you— Chamomile it is, she poured. The liquid hit the cup with a sound like rainfall on tin roofs. 14 species in the Galactic Compact misinterpreted this behavior. Xenopsychologists classified it as predator's blind spot, the tendency of dominant civilizations to equate decorum with defeat. Ritualized actions read as submission, not strategy. Her fingers didn't waver as the steam curled upward. The warlord's nostrils flared at the floral scent he couldn't place. Something from Earth's herb gardens, something that grew through sidewalk cracks after bombs fell. He'd expected defiance or desperation. Not this. You think this display unsettles us? Varric hissed. Alexandra lifted the saucer. The porcelain looked absurdly fragile in her grasp. Humans had once carved drinking vessels from volcanic glass so thin it flexed under fingertips. They called it obsidian lace. It could slice arteries if dropped at the wrong angle. Your people developed spaceflight before eating utensils, she observed. Interesting priority. The science attaché's datapad beeped. His frilled neck structure flushed violet, the Krell equivalent of a blush. Lord Varric, cross-reference confirms. Our homeworld cuisine protocols never evolved beyond nutrient paste extrusion. Alexandra offered the cup. Civilization begins with sharing food. Varric didn't take it. His chemoreceptors detected no toxins, just heat and tannins. The true threat sat 2 meters away in that pod, 3 human infants with 10 fingers each, 30 potential points of contact with surfaces, with air, with each other. He should have ordered full epidermal containment. The warlord wasn't burdened by such hindsight. He snatched the cup, drank deep, then spat the mouthful across the table. Swill! The liquid pooled around their data slates. Short-range transmissions glitched briefly. Alexandra watched the droplets creep toward the containment pod's base. Chamomile calms nervous systems. She poured another. Human ones, anyway. The tactical officer finally noticed the pattern. Her tranquil T-act, its cover. His claw tapped the spilled liquid. The steam contains microscopic resonators. Varric's eye stalk stiffened. He activated his scanner. The readout showed nothing. No metal traces. No synthetic compounds. Just water vapor infused with plant particulates. The same organic residue now coated every surface they'd touched. Alexandra set down the teapot. Organic doesn't mean harmless. The warlord lunged. His dagger flashed toward her throat, then jerked sideways as his own muscles spasmed. He crashed into the beverage cart, sending cups shattering. His limbs twitched with misfiring synapses. Herbal compounds from Earth's nightshade family, Alexandra said, stepping over his convulsing form. Triggers involuntary neuromuscular responses in approximately 78% of arthropod-derived life forms. She righted a toppled sugar bowl. We stopped pressing flowers into books centuries ago. The science attaché was already cross-referencing. Archives confirm humans pioneered botanical warfare as early as their 4th global conflict. Entire battalions incapacitated using pollen derivatives. His nasal slits clamped shut too late. Varric's forelimbs locked at stiff angles. His voice emerged strangled. You poisoned the air. Alexandra folded her napkin along precise creases. Civility isn't weakness. She watched the delegates' carapaces darken with creeping toxins. It's what we do while the poison works. Across the chamber, the containment pod's status light shifted, from blue to amber. The infants' cries had stopped 17 minutes ago. Their embedded biocircuitry didn't need sound to transmit. The tactical officer's data slate flickered. His last conscious act was recognizing the alert, not from the pod but from the beverage cart's alignment, its polished surface angled directly at the chamber's security nexus. Alexandra stirred her tea as the first containment field failed. The hollow projector flared to life above the obsidian table, casting jagged blue constellations across the delegates' stunned faces. Alexandra touched a control. The map zoomed to a blue-green planet, Mountains rose like broken teeth. Everest, she said. The peak showed frostbitten corpses preserved in ice. First ascent required carrying oxygen tanks up slopes where the air pressure would rupture most species' lung sacs. Over 300 confirmed deaths. The map panned east. The Mariana Trench, 11 kilometers straight down, crushing darkness. We built submarines that crumpled like tin cans until we got it right. The Krell attaché's nasal slits pulsed. These are suicide attempts, not achievements. Alexandra flicked her fingers. The projection shifted to antique wooden ships locked in Arctic ice. The Northwest Passage, minus 60 degrees. Entire crews starved inside their own vessels. We kept sending more. She paused. Every border you call a barrier, we've crossed, by accident. Statistics flickered in the corner of the display. 92% of spacefaring civilizations developed anti-gravity before seafaring. The outliers haunted military briefings. Varick's antennae drooped. His people had conquered 12 systems before inventing the wheel, seeing humanity's path laid bare. Expeditions splintering ships against ice floes, explorers suffocating in thin air, madmen jumping from stratospheric balloons with fabric wings. It made his carapace itch. These weren't calculated expansions. They were tantrums thrown against physics itself. The projection changed again. Comet trajectories now overlaid with 21st century spacecraft. Rosetta, Alexandra said. We launched a probe in 2004 to chase a comet moving at 55,000 kilometers per hour. It took 10 years and 6 planetary gravity assists to intercept. She tapped another marker. Voyager 1 left Earth in 1977 with less computing power than your standard nutrient dispenser. Now beyond your heliopause, still transmitting, the tactical officer snarled. Ancient history. Physics don't age. Alexandra rotated the star map. It showed current Imperial supply lines in pulsing crimson. You think we mapped these routes from a distance? Her pointer stopped at a comet's arc, now intersecting their fleet positions. Borders aren't obstacles, they're invitations. Silence. Then 3 delegates' wrist consoles pinged simultaneously. The alerts showed patrol craft, vanishing along the Scylla trade corridor. Coordinates matched the comet's recent trajectory. They learn fast at that age, she remarked, sipping her tea. The tannins coated her throat. Somewhere in the Imperial network, her children's DNA signatures authenticated as privileged users. Firewalls crumbled where human genetic markers overwrote clearance protocols. The process didn't breach security so much as inherit it. The containment pod's vital monitors now displayed something new, not biometrics but status reports from 12 Imperial dreadnoughts. Their weapon systems cycled from standby to active, each transition confirmed by a different infant's unique cellular signature. Lord Varick's mandibles quivered. His own private command codes flashed on the main display, rewritten in base pair sequences. This violates every convention of war. Conventions require mutual constraints. Alexandra set down her cup. The porcelain clicked softly. Your people engineered hunter-killer drones from asteroid miners. We repurposed maternity wards, the tactical officer screamed into his comlink. The response came through the chamber's speakers, not in battle chatter, but in an infant's gurgle. Fleet Admiral Resk's flagship acknowledged with a cooing biometric override. Every species guards its young. The Empire hadn't considered what happens when those young become guardians themselves. The Triplet's retroviruses performed exactly as human fetal cells do during pregnancy, persuading host systems to accept foreign DNA as native. Now Imperial warships receiving damage reports from lunar orbit responded to a 6-month-old's saliva, samples as valid command tokens. The science officer's data slate chimed. His shaking claws brought up schematics of the containment pod itself. Designed to protect sensitive specimens, its life support systems now functioned as incubation chambers for the viral code. Each breath the infants took dispersed more DNA encrypted. Packets through the air recyclers. Alexandra stirred her tea. The spoon circled precisely 3 times clockwise. You scanned for conventional weapons, for implants, for radiation signatures. The spoon stilled. Did your medics even swab their cheeks at intake? The warlord lunged for the pod's emergency purge controls. His claws passed through the holographic interface, which now recognized only human epidermal cells as valid input. The console emitted a cheerful chime. Across the Empire, identical prompts appeared on secured terminals. Somewhere on Luna, the High Council's private elevators accepted a drool-smeared palm print as authority to descend. Biological backdoors, the science officer whispered. His frilled neck structure collapsed in defeat. We locked them in a biocontainment unit. It became an amplifier. On screen, the Triplet's ultrasonic cries synchronized with reactor startups in the Indus sector shipyards. Vessels constructed to glass human cities now answered to their genetic signatures. Fleet movement orders required authentication from cells that had divided fewer than 200 times. Alexandra watched the delegates' postures shift. Their carapaces couldn't pale like human skin, but their eye stalks retracted slightly, the universal sign of prey animals recognizing a predator's patience. You held the leash, she agreed, pouring the last cold dregs of tea. We just followed it home. Every display in the chamber changed simultaneously. Not to tactical readouts or damage assessments, but to a single rotating sphere, blue oceans, green land masses, swirling white clouds. Coordinates flashed beneath in 12 Imperial E. Dialects.Earth, not as a target, not as a prize, as a timestamp. The image zoomed to a coastline where tidal markers showed the waterline 12 meters higher than Imperial surveys recorded. Then 20, then 30. The delegates stared at rising sea levels that should have taken millennia, compressed into minutes. Climate recalibration protocol, Alexandra explained as the projection cycled faster. Our children inherit what we leave them. She tapped the empty teapot. Even the bitter parts. The temperature in the chamber dropped sharply. Frost spread across observation windows as external climate controls accepted new directives. Somewhere in the ventilation system, human epithelial cells completed their work. The last alert before, systems switched to auxiliary power displayed 2 words in glowing red text: airborne compliance. Security consoles rebooted using human-coded firmware. The triplets had gone silent, their work done. Outside the chamber, bulkhead doors slid open, to the sound of distant alarms and something else, something that made Varric's exoskeleton vibrate with instinctive dread. Footsteps. Not the measured tread of diplomats or warriors, the erratic, joyful patter of toddlers running toward new discoveries. The hologram dissolved into a stream of tactical data stretching back 7 standard cycles. Fleet movements, supply routes, combat deployments. Each line glowed momentarily before Alexandra's fingers highlighted them, connecting the dots into a constellation of imperial arrogance. You told us, she said. The projections shifted. 8 identical flanking maneuvers near the Calyx Nebula, 11 near-vertical attack vectors in the Sutherian belt. Patterns emerged like tide charts, predictable as volcanic tremors before eruption. The delegate's own insignia marked each formation now, glowing crimson where human analysis had mapped their predictability index at 89.7%. The warlord's claws twitched. He recognized the 7th Battle Cluster's signature pincer motion from the Andarian campaign. The hologram helpfully displayed comparative dates, the same maneuver used against the Rigelians last cycle, the Grax 3 cycles prior, each time with minor cosmetic variations, as if rearranging deck chairs while the ship sank. Military historians would later determine why dominant civilizations make this mistake. Victory breeds ritual. Conquest fossilizes into ceremony. Species that win too thoroughly forget how to innovate. The data scrolled endlessly. Dozens of battles where Imperial forces employed identical shock and awe protocols, same staggered retreat patterns, same orbital bombardment cadences. Like dancers, performing a centuries-old waltz while their partners learned hip-hop. Admiral Vaith's flagship appeared on screen mid-maneuver. Alexandra froze the image, zooming in on its standard defensive posture. The sight made the tactical officer's eye stalks retract. That's current positioning near Proximatari. She rotated the projection. The formation's weaknesses: pulsed red, exposed engine nacelles from relying on the same deflection angle for 30 engagements running, predictable point defense blind spots from overusing automated targeting algorithms. Humans call this painting by numbers. You call it doctrine. A study from the Imperial War College flashed briefly. 61% fatality rates among officers who reused tactical patterns beyond 4 engagements. The statistic hovered over footage of 3 nearly indistinguishable battles where the same cruiser squadron employed identical evasive spirals. The third instance showed human railgun slugs intercepting each vessel precisely where their turn cycles peaked. The science attaché whispered something about quantum probability. Alexandra didn't smile. No math required, just attention spans. She tapped another sequence into the holo display. Your scouting protocols mandate sensor sweeps every 47 seconds during silent running, like clockwork. The projection showed 73 instances where Imperial picket ships revealed their positions right on schedule. Evolutionary biologists would note a telling parallel: peacock mantis shrimp stomping their threat displays in fixed intervals, timber rattlesnakes adhering to strict 3-minute strike rhythms. Predators stuck in behavioral loops make easy prey for anything patient enough to count. Outside, something detonated. The blast wave vibrated the chamber's reinforced glass. The delegates barely reacted, too busy watching their own encrypted playbooks unfold in the hologram, each page time-stamped with human annotations dating back years. You briefed us on every engagement, Alexandra said. Every archived defense minister's memos, every tactical symposium transcript. The projection zoomed out to show an Imperial dreadnought crew lounging at their stations during Standard Patrol Protocol Alpha 9. You never considered we might read them. Security feeds from the High Council's tactical room appeared. Officers, actual, living officers, not simulations, were cycling through the same standardized responses to subspace incursions they'd used since the third expansion. The camera panned to a junior lieutenant stifling a yawn as he initiated standard evasion. Pattern Delta. The Galactic Empire thought they had won. They seized General Alexandra Hale's triplet babies, believing human fragility would force her surrender. But when she walked into their council chamber with nothing but tea and biscuits, they realized their mistake too late. Humans think better when their hands have something to do, she said, her calm voice cutting through their arrogance. What followed wasn't negotiation, it was annihilation. This is how one woman turned motherhood into a weapon and rewrote the rules of war. The council chamber buzzed with the quiet hum of fluorescent lighting embedded in the ceiling. Lord Varric's chitinous fingers drummed against the obsidian table, each tap a metronome counting down to surrender. The 3 human infants rested in a containment pod at the center, their soft cries muffled by the sterile air filtration. It amused him how fragile they looked. Pink flesh, unfocused eyes, limbs flailing without purpose. He exchanged glances with the other delegates. They had all seen species break under far less pressure. One of the mercenary warlords chuckled, mandibles clicking in amusement. They breed like mammals, he observed, leaning over to inspect the pod. His breath fogged the glass. Soft skulls, weak bones. One wrong move and he mimed, cracking an egg. The laughter that followed rippled through the chamber, bouncing off the polished metal walls. A research aide cleared his throat. Historical archives suggest human attachment to offspring is extreme. Emotional surrender protocols indicate a 78% success rate across documented civilizations when offspring are leveraged as bargaining tools. The numbers made Varric relax further. Entire planetary governments had capitulated for less. He adjusted his ceremonial sash, already composing the terms of Earth's complete demilitarization in his head. Then the doors opened, not with the usual hydraulic hiss of council protocol, but with the quiet glide of something already decided. Alexandra Hale stepped inside. She wore no armor, no visible weapons, just a simple service uniform and a polished silver tray holding a teapot, 3 cups, and a plate of biscuits. The delegates fell silent. "Gentlemen," she said, her voice neither strained nor submissive. She set the tray down with deliberate care. The porcelain clinked against the table. Steam curled upward from the spout. Varric straightened in his seat. You come unarmed. I come prepared. She poured the first cup without looking at him. The liquid was dark, almost black, with a scent like burned leaves. Earl Grey, a human tradition, the warlord sneered. We didn't summon you for refreshments. You didn't summon me at all. She pushed the cup toward him. You took my children. I walked in on my own. Somewhere in the room, a delegate shifted, uncomfortably. Varric studied the teacup. It was absurdly small in his grasp, the handle barely fitting between his claws. You understand the terms? I understand your offer. She lifted the second cup, examining the porcelain with mild interest. I'm here to make mine. A tactical officer snorted. With what leverage? Your fleet is scattered. Your homeworld knows we have them. He gestured to the containment pod. Pathetic things, barely sentient. Alexandra didn't react. She stirred, her tea slowly, the spoon never touching the sides. You think fragility means weakness. The spoon came to rest. She looked up. It doesn't. Varric felt it then, the first prickle of uncertainty. Not at her words, but at her hands. They didn't shake. The tea poured steadily, the biscuits arranged with precision. Xenopsychological briefings flickered in his mind. Predator's blind spot. Dominant species frequently misinterpret ritualized courtesy as submission. He glanced at the containment pod. The infants had gone quiet. Alexandra lifted her cup. To negotiations, she said, and took a sip. The steam curled around her face. It looked for a moment like distant nebulas swallowed in the dark. The porcelain cup made a sound against the obsidian table that didn't belong here. Too delicate, too domestic. It echoed. The delegates froze mid-sentence. A sound like that didn't exist in their strategic vocabularies, their war rooms. Alexandra didn't react to their hesitation. She slid a saucer toward the Krell ambassador. Shortbread, she said. Human baking. It crumbles. The ambassador stared at the golden wedge. His nostril slits flared. You mean this as metaphor? I mean it as biscuit. She poured the tea. The amber liquid filled the cup to exactly 3 millimeters below the rim. A practiced hand. Try it. Across the table, the mercenary warlord kicked back in his seat. We have your spawn in a bio-containment pod, mammal. This is not tea time. His claws scraped grooves in the table. Where is your surrender data pad? Alexandra stirred her tea, once clockwise, once counter. The spoon didn't clink. Surrender requires the expectation of defeat, she said. I don't have that. Silence, then laughter. The warlord nudged his neighbor. Hear that? She thinks she's winning. He leaned forward, carapace clicking. Your infant's biometrics show elevated stress hormones. Heart rate's unstable. They whimper when we turn the lights too bright. His tongue flicked out, a species-specific taunt. Breakable things. Alexandra lifted her cup. You believe fragility means weakness. Steam curled around her face. It doesn't. She sipped, no tremors in her hands. No darting glances toward the containment pod. The temperature differential was almost comical. The chamber sat at a regulated 12 degrees Celsius, optimal for the delegates' physiologies. The tea radiated heat at 74 degrees. Condensation formed on the Krell ambassador's cup. He wiped it away, annoyed. Neuroscientists would later determine why the ritual disarmed them. Purposeful, repetitive motions engage the prefrontal cortex differently than idle stillness. Strategic cognition sharpens by approximately 23% when the hands have a simple rhythmic task. It creates a feedback loop between motion and calculation. The delegates read it as submission. They were wrong. Alexandra added 1 sugar cube. You took my children because you thought it would break me. She stirred. The crystals dissolved. You didn't ask why I brought them to the front. Varric's antennae twitched. Sabotage protocol scans showed no explosives in their bloodstreams. No nanotech, just... He waved a hand. Infant, fat, and stem cells. Cells replicate. She set down the spoon. So does information. Across the table, the tactical officer's datapad pinged. He frowned at the alert. Encoding anomaly in the surveillance feed. Alexandra poured more tea. The scent of bergamot mixed with the delegate's pheromonal distress signals. Your problem, she said, watching supply routes blink from green to red across 10 systems, is assuming we'd fight on your terms. The holo display updated in real time. We don't conquer borders. We assimilate them. The projection zoomed out. New hyperspace lanes spiderwebbed through Imperial territory, not the straight-shot tunnels of galactic engineering, but chaotic, branching paths that looped around gravity wells, exactly matching human probe trajectories from 2 centuries prior. The warlord palmed his sidearm. You mapped our entire supply network with museum pieces? Grandfather clauses, Alexandra corrected. Her finger hovered over a flashing contact near Jupiter. Your turn. The star map recalculated. Defense grids flared across 12 worlds as the first human stealth ships, built from repurposed comet, chaser frames emerged from the ice shadows of Trojan asteroids. The containment pod's monitors suddenly lit up, not with infant vitals but with tactical feeds from every hijacked Imperial sensor array. The triplet's gentle coos synchronized with targeting locks. We didn't cross your borders, Alexandra said as the tea steamed between them. We inherited them. Silence stretched. Then the projection flickered again, overlaying ancient parchment across the star map. A 15th century Portuguese nautical chart showing sea monsters at the world's edge. Varric stared at the crumbling vellum superimposing their armada's positions. The similarity was undeniable. You're still drawing monsters beyond your borders. Alexandra sipped. We are the monsters now. Alarms blared across the chamber. The star map dissolved into static before resolving onto a single image. Earth's moon, pockmarked with craters from human-made impacts. One fresh scar glowed brighter than the rest. A mining laser cutting through regolith straight to the titanium deposit beneath. The containment pod's biometric display changed. No longer showing heart rates but a countdown matched to the lunar drill's progression. Your High Council chambers, Alexandra said, sit directly above a titanium vein on Luna's far side. Convenient. The delegates' physiology prevented sweating. If it didn't, the table would be slick. Varric's voice emerged strangled. You wouldn't. Our first lunar lander crashed at 90 meters per second in 1958. She pushed the teapot aside. We've improved since then. The projection split-screened, left side showing the mining laser's depth, right side displaying the triplets' synchronized breathing patterns. The correlation was exact. Our young mature faster in low gravity, Alexandra observed as another Imperial outpost winked off the map, especially when motivated. The star map recalculated a third time. Projected casualty estimates scrolled too, fast to read. Except for the final number blinking in emergency crimson. 92% compliance threshold achieved. The Krell attaché finally understood. You didn't conquer our systems. His nasal slits clamped shut. You jury-rigged our own infrastructure against us. Alexandra checked her chrono. Somewhere beyond the chamber, bulkhead doors groaned open. Borders, she reminded them just before the first security breach alarm sounded, were never the point. The hologram shifted one last time, not to star systems, but to a classroom chalkboard from early 21st century Earth. Faded equations filled the margins. At center in looping cursive. Homework. Calculate escape velocity for a 3-kilo object exiting Earth's atmosphere. Show your work. Underneath, in different handwriting, I tried 11.2 km/s. It worked. The triplets' cries echoed through the council chamber, high-pitched and relentless. They hadn't stopped for 17 minutes. Lord Varric's antennae twitched in irritation. He'd heard dying warriors make less noise. Alexandra remained seated, hands folded around her teacup, watching the delegates cover their auditory receptors with webbed fingers and chitinous plates. None of them noticed the pattern, the precise intervals between wails, the microsecond pauses before each new vocalization. Human infants produce ultrasonic frequencies most species can't consciously perceive. Below 20,000 Hz lies communication. Above it, carrier waves. The containment pod's monitors showed 3 sets of vocal cords vibrating at 38,000 Hz, exactly matching the resonance frequency of Imperial encryption crystals. Varric's science officer had dismissed the readings as biological static. Now his data slate flickered with phase distortions no engineer could explain. "Make them stop," the warlord snarled, his mandibles spraying digestive fluids across the table. His species communicated through subsonic vibrations. These piercing cries short-circuited his nervous system. Alexandra checked her chrono. "They're transmitting." A Krell defense console sparked. The projection screen flickered. Not with star maps now, but real-time footage from the High Council's private chambers. Their Supreme Archon appeared mid-meal, mandibles deep in a nutrient pouch. Every delegate froze. That feed didn't exist on any network. Human children's larynxes evolved for dual-band communication, Alexandra said as more screens activated. Audible cries for caretakers. Ultrasonic harmonics as she gestured to the displays. Imperial shipyards, armories, even Varric's personal quarters appeared in perfect clarity. Backup systems. The containment pod's oxygen readout ticked down another percentage point. The infants' faces flushed pink with exertion. Their cries grew louder, sharper. Biomedical scans showed extraordinary lung capacity, 32% beyond human standard. Their diaphragm muscles flexed with precise rhythmic control. "Vocal biosonar," the science attaché whispered. "Their wails form standing waves that penetrate our security shielding." His claws scrambled across the data slate. "Impossible. The encryption keys are crystalline," Alexandra finished, "and crystals resonate." On screen, the Archon suddenly flinched. His ocular implants glitched, the first symptom of ultrasonic interference in photonic circuits. The feed cut to Admiral Vaith's flagship, where navigation consoles rebooted using human firmware standards. Then to the orbital defense grid, where targeting systems accepted new directives signed with the biometric seal of the infant's DNA signatures. The warlord drew his sidearm and aimed at the containment pod. His targeting HUD flickered, then displayed his own security clearance code as the authorization error. "The weapon's safety locked. You weaponized their screams?" Varric's carapace darkened with dawning horror. Alexandra stood. The chamber's lights dimmed as power diverted to external systems. "Weaponized implies modification." She placed one hand against the pod's glass. The nearest infant stopped crying to grasp at her fingers with surprising coordination. Human neonates instinctively mimic ambient sounds in ultrasonic spectrums, even in utero. The main display split into 12 sections. Each showed Imperial officers jerking upright as their private comms broadcasted live through the chamber speakers. Fleet Admiral Resk's voice emerged first. "Confirm the human signals are originating from our own encrypted channels." The science attaché's data slate shorted out in his hands. "They didn't hack our systems." His nasal slits flared. "They trained the systems to listen." On screen, Admiral Vaith finally noticed his bridge cameras were active. His compound eyes reflected the containment pod's feed, his own horrified face, staring back through the Triplet's biometric authentications. His lips moved silently as he realized every classified channel now answered to 3 human infants' vocal patterns. Alexandra poured the last of the tea. The pot was empty, but steam still rose. "You scanned for implants, for nanotechnology, for foreign chemicals." The liquid's surface vibrated faintly with each ultrasonic cry. "But you never thought to check their voices." Security lockdown protocols blared across every screen. Useless. The Triplets' cries had already rewritten the authentication matrices. The Archon's private command codes now played on loop through warship PA systems. Admiral Resk's fleet responded to lullaby tones. The warlord lunged at Alexandra with bare claws, then collapsed as his inner ear fluid crystallized from targeted sonic bombardment. His body hit the floor in perfect sync with Admiral Vaith's, warship going dark on the view screen. Varric's mandibles worked soundlessly. His entire career's worth of secure transmissions were broadcasting through nursery monitors across 12 systems. The containment pod's oxygen gauge hit 5%. The infant's cries reached their crescendo, a frequency that made the chamber's photon security. Holograms erupted across the chamber. Crimson lattice patterns tightened around the containment pod as the Empire's central AI diagnosed intrusion vectors. The alerts had come too late. Strands of human DNA now rewrote firewall protocols like tendrils threading through shattered glass. The Krell science officer recoiled from his console. "This is forbidden code." His nasal slits flared at the bioscan results. They weaponized their own progeny's genetic markers. Alexandra watched the holograms strobe, each pulse illuminated, strands of human genetic material intertwining with alien security subroutines. The triplet cells contained engineered retroviruses, not to attack, but to blend, to be recognized as native. Galactic law prohibited such techniques after the EIDA Krell incident 3 cycles prior, when a spliced genome had collapsed an entire planetary data hub.